put money into the market, let it compound for a long period of time. Obviously, that's a good thing to do. Not saying it's not, but what it's not going to do is change your life anytime soon. Like, if you look at how long it takes, like we talked about the hockey stick thing, right? It's like, and it takes probably like 30 years at least just for that to really get going. Like in the early days of compounding, you're putting in the vast majority of it yourself, and the amount that you're getting in terms of compound returns is tiny. And obviously over time that increases. So if you've got 40 years, then that's fantastic. But I think so much personal finance advice that you see is just start doing this in your 20s, and in your 60s you'll be fine. It's like, cool, but what if you're not in your 20s? Like, you can't go back in time. So what are you going to do? And even if you do start in your 20s, after 20 years, if you're forced to stop work, or you have to, or you want to stop work or whatever, 20 years isn't enough. It's not going to make that much of a difference. If you left it for another 20, it would be. But if you interrupt compounding at that point, it doesn't really work anymore. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying it's not going to be, maybe it's something to do for the future. But if you want to make a big change to your life anytime soon, it's not going to do that much for you.
Off the back of that, another well-quoted thing when it comes to compounding is people always quote the average return of the market. And they say in the last 100 years, we've done 9%. So extrapolate that out.
Yeah.
Do you think that is a good assumption to make?
I think it's a risky assumption to make if you're relying on that, because like you see people sort of like talk about 9%, 10%. But if you look at what that's based on the US market over the last 100 years or whatever. That happens to be the time when the US has dominated the world. It's been the best performing market in the world for that time. So the best performing market is 10%. So if you then put everything into the US, maybe you could expect that in the future. But is the US going to continue to dominate for the next 100 years? It's highly unlikely. If you look back at the history of the world, it's just like that tends to be not how things work. So then you need to go and pick what the next best is going to be. So if you do that, maybe you'll get 10% if you manage to pick the next best performing economy for the next 100 years. Are you going to be able to do that? Probably not. So you're going to want to diversify. You'll want to put some in the US, some in Europe, some in Japan, whatever. Spread your bets. But if you're doing that, then you're obviously not going to get the return of the best anymore. You're going to get more of an average. So maybe that pulls your 10 down to a 7. And then that is all before inflation. So say inflation is 2%, which is what it's supposed to be, then like real, that's taking you down to 5. What if inflation is higher? So quite soon you kind of go from this amazing sounding headline number down to something that's less exciting. So again, it's like not saying, oh, this is all pointless, but it's saying don't do your sums on the basis of everything on this incredible run from the best in the world, where for the last however many years, everything's been structurally pushing up the value of everything.
Stress test to the downside. In terms, when you stress test to the upside with mortgages, you might go, what if it was 5% real? Or what if it was 4%? What would that look like? And would I be saving enough?
Exactly.
This was a clip from our interview with Rob Dix about myths about money. For the full episode, click right here.